Black Janitor yelled, "Don't get in that car." Seconds later, the billionaire froze at what he saw. It was one of those mornings when the city felt wrapped in gold. Sunshine bouncing off glass towers, cars honking, people rushing. The kind of day where billionaires in suits smiled at the mirror, believing nothing could touch them. Ethan Monroe was one of them. A self-made billionaire, CEO of Monroe Innovations, known for his brilliance, his boldness, and his ego. He'd built his empire from scratch, but over time, power had hardened him. To him, janitors, drivers, waiters, they were invisible. Background noise in the soundtrack of his success. That morning, he had a meeting that could change his company's future. A $10 billion acquisition deal. Cameras waited outside his Manhattan headquarters, ready to catch his confident stride as he stepped into his custom black Rolls-Royce. Inside the lobby, Daniel Brooks, the janitor, was mopping the marble floors as usual. He'd worked in that building for 15 years, always quiet, polite, unnoticed. Most executives barely nodded at him. But Daniel noticed everything. Who smiled, who sneered, who was late, who was kind. When Ethan passed him, Daniel gave a small, respectful nod. "Morning, sir." Ethan barely glanced at him. "Yeah," the elevator chimed. Cameras flashed outside. Ethan's assistant rushed ahead, pulling open the glass doors. "Car's ready, sir." As Ethan adjusted his tie and walked out toward the curb, Daniel suddenly froze. His mop slipped from his hands. His eyes locked on the Rolls-Royce. Something was wrong. He saw a faint red light blinking under the car, tiny, fast, rhythmic. His heartbeat spiked. He'd seen something like that before. Years ago, in a past life no one here knew about. Daniel dropped the mop and sprinted toward the door. "Sir, don't get in that car," he shouted. Ethan stopped mid-step, startled. Everyone turned. Security, assistants, even the press. "What?" Ethan barked. Daniel's voice cracked through the confusion. "Don't get in that car." Security guards rushed toward him. "Hey, step back, sir." But Daniel pointed to the undercarriage. "There's something under it." A red blinking light. "Get everyone back." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Ethan looked down and saw it too, a blinking red dot beneath his car. The world seemed to stop. "Everyone move," Daniel shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him back hard. "Now," people screamed. Security pushed the crowd away. Within seconds, a sharp, deafening explosion ripped through the air. The Rolls-Royce erupted into flames. Metal, glass, and smoke blasting across the street. Ethan fell to the pavement, ears ringing, face pale, staring in disbelief. The car, his car, was gone. He turned, gasping, to see Daniel lying a few feet away, bruised but alive, his arm shielding his face from the blast. "Call 911. Someone yelled. Ethan crawled toward him, his voice shaking. You just saved my life." Daniel coughed, his voice hoarse. "Yeah, guess so." Ethan looked at him, still in shock. How did you know?" Daniel took a deep breath, staring at the smoke curling into the sky. "I used to work bomb disposal. Army, Afghanistan. I've seen that light before." Ethan's mouth went dry. You're ex-military?" Daniel nodded faintly. "Was a specialist. Got hurt on a mission. Lost a few brothers. Came home, took this job. Quiet suits me better." Ethan stared at him, the man he'd walked past 100 times, never speaking more than a few words. The man who just risked his life to save his police and bomb squad vehicles swarmed the street. Reporters shouted questions. Paramedics checked Daniel's burns. Ethan couldn't move. He just kept looking at the janitor who had become his hero. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The image replayed in his mind. Daniel yelling, the explosion, the raw fear he'd never felt before. He realized how fragile life was, and how blind he'd been. The next morning, he visited the hospital. Daniel was sitting up in bed, bandaged but smiling faintly when Ethan walked in. "Didn't think I'd see you again so soon," Daniel said quietly. Ethan chuckled nervously. "Neither did I. You saved me." "I don't even have words," Daniel shrugged. "Just did what anyone would." Ethan shook his head. "No, you did what no one else could. You noticed. You cared. He sat beside him, emotion thick in his throat. You've been cleaning our halls for 15 years. I never even asked your name. Daniel smiled softly. Now you know it. Ethan's eyes glistened. Daniel, I owe you my life, and that's not something I'll forget. When Daniel was released, Ethan personally arranged a ceremony at headquarters. The employees gathered in the lobby where Daniel had once stood invisible with his mop. Ethan took the stage. Cameras rolled. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. Yesterday, I nearly lost my life, he began. But because of one man's courage and quick thinking, I'm standing here today. That man isn't a board member, or a CEO, or an investor. He's someone we've all walked past without seeing. He turned toward Daniel, who stood awkwardly in his hospital jacket. Mr. Daniel Brooks, you reminded me that true worth isn't measured by status but by character. You reminded me that heroes don't wear suits. Sometimes they wear work boots. The audience erupted in applause. Daniel blinked, trying not to cry. Ethan handed him an envelope. Inside was a promotion, head of building security, and a check with more zeros than Daniel had ever seen. Consider this a start, Ethan said quietly. But more than that, consider this respect, something I should have given you long ago. Daniel looked at him, voice trembling. Thank you, sir. But I didn't save you for money. Ethan smiled faintly. I know. That's why you deserve it. Months later, Daniel's story went viral. From janitor to hero, the headlines read. But for him, life didn't really change much. He still showed up early, still said good morning to everyone, still mopped the floors when no one else wanted to. But now, every person in that building saw him, really saw him. And as for Ethan, he never got into another car without remembering that voice yelling, "Don't get in that car," the voice that woke him up to what truly mattered. He started a new foundation in Daniel's name, dedicated to hiring veterans, giving them stability, dignity, and a second chance. Because heroes, he realized, don't just save lives, they remind others how to live. Moral: never look down on anyone. The person you ignore today might be the one who saves you tomorrow. Respect isn't earned by wealth or titles. It's earned by courage, humility, and heart. True greatness is measured not by how high you rise, but how deeply you care.